The history of Thanksgiving, explained in Minecraft. The origins of Thanksgiving actually predate European colonies in the Americas. Setting time aside to give thanks along with holding harvest feasts were both practices that had been long practiced in Europe. Puritans observed days of fasting before days of Thanksgiving to thank God for bountiful harvest, victory, and so on. In colonial North America, the first documented Thanksgiving-like services took place in the 16th century and were conducted by the Spanish and French. These days of Thanksgiving were celebrated through church services and feasting. However, the most famous Thanksgiving event was the Pilgrims' famous feast of 1621. In 1620, English pilgrims seeking religious freedom arrived on the Mayflower and founded Plymouth Colony in Massachusetts. Unprepared for the new climate and conditions, a harsh winter wiped out half the Plymouth settlers. Thankfully, the Wampanoag Native Americans taught them essential farming and survival skills. One example was teaching the Pilgrims to grow native corn, which was more suited to grow in Plymouth's sandy soil than the European grains the Pilgrims brought over. Due to the help of the natives, there was a bountiful harvest in the autumn of 1621, which meant a celebratory feast. The Pilgrims prepared for the celebration by sending out 4 hunters to shoot some fowl or large birds. They brought back poultry, although it is unknown if it was turkey or some other large bird. During the feast, the Pilgrims shot off guns either as a show of celebration or a show of force to the nearby Wampanoags. On high alert, 90 armed Wampanoags investigated the gunshots at Plymouth, outnumbering the Pilgrims nearly 2 to 1. However, the two groups soon socialized and feasted together without incident over the next few days. The Wampanoags also contributed to the feast by supplying 5 deer. In total, the feast included venison, fowl, and probably fish, shellfish, stews, vegetables, and beer. In the years following the Pilgrims' famous feast, individual colonies and communities across New England began observing Thanksgiving days. These days were declared by local leaders and were not necessarily annual events. During the American Revolution, the Continental Congress issued proclamations for a national Thanksgiving, but eventually left it to the states as some objected to the national government's involvement in a religious observance. There were some exceptions, such as George Washington in 1789, the first year of his presidency, declaring the last Thursday in November as a national day of Thanksgiving. Still, these early national Thanksgivings were irregular and not celebrated on the same day. As the United States entered the mid-19th century, it was suffering from a growing sectional crisis dividing the North and South, which would eventually erupt into the Civil War. During the sectional crisis, one woman attempted to unify the country in her own way. Sarah Josepha Hale, an influential writer and editor best known for writing Mary Had a Little Lamb, campaigned for a national Thanksgiving holiday to help unify the nation. She wrote editorials and letters to politicians and even presidents. Unfortunately, her efforts were unsuccessful at first, as Southerners considered it a Yankee holiday and part of a Northern plot to impose their way of life on the South, which was a lightning rod of controversy during this time. It wasn't until the Civil War when Hale's efforts finally succeeded. On October 3, 1863, with the memory of the bloody Battle of Gettysburg just months before, Abraham Lincoln proclaimed a national day of Thanksgiving on Thursday, November 26, in order to heal the wounds of the nation. Thanksgiving was now a national holiday. However, Thanksgiving was still not a legal federal holiday that was celebrated automatically every year. Instead, every president after Lincoln had to declare the event every November, with the date usually being set for the last Thursday in November. This tradition would last until 1939, when one controversy would make Thanksgiving a national federal holiday. In 1939, in the midst of the Great Depression, Thanksgiving was set to take place on November 30th, which was also the last day of the month. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt attempted to move Thanksgiving forward by 1 week to November 23rd in order to extend the holiday shopping season, which typically began around Thanksgiving, in order to boost the economy. This change was a big surprise to many, and for the first time, Americans celebrated Thanksgiving on different days. Some celebrated it on November 30th, dubbed Republican Thanksgiving, and some celebrated it on November 23rd, dubbed Democratic Thanksgiving, or Franksgiving. Some even celebrated it on both days just to be sure. And in 1940, this happened again. In 1941, Congress compromised by making Thanksgiving a national federal holiday and firmly fixing the date on the 4th Thursday of November, where it remains today. And that was the history of Thanksgiving explained in Minecraft. So as you stuff your face with a turkey and watch some football, I hope you all take a moment to appreciate the history of Thanksgiving. Thank you all for watching, and take care everybody.